did because, they claim to have an issue here or there. So, um, to me, you just look at places like Australia, look at places like England. England's got a pretty serious knife crime, knife, fighting problem. But I'd rather have a bunch of people running around fighting each other with knives than AK-47s. I mean, not either of them aren't a good thing, but that's kind of where I am on it, and I'm just sending love and just deep thoughts of of hope, and to everybody that's affected by this. Look, there's nothing anybody can say that makes a difference. There's a giant hole right now, and hopefully that hole will get a little smaller over time, but it sucks, and there's nothing anybody can do about it except us be up here and talking about it. So yeah, I'll jump off my soapbox now and
Yeah, it's not.
join the
It's
group.
actually no. That's actually really interesting, Rev, and I appreciate your input, especially given that you're coming from the state of Illinois. You mentioned the shootings in Chicago. I'm
Hmm.
well aware of the fact that there's been a big spike. What I am ignorant about though is what types of weapons are being used in those shootings. Are they semi-automatic rifles or are they
Hmm.
pistols? Is there a
Okay,
correlation there?
yeah, not being an absolute expert on it, obviously, on the type of weapons, but yeah, it's mostly handguns, mostly coming from Indiana. A lot of them coming legally, but then are sold illegally in Illinois. Access to handguns are super easy one state over. Remember, I just told you how hard it is to get a gun in Illinois, and but you can get one, and you can concealed carry too. I mean, you're allowed to do it, but it's a bit of a process. But you could just drive over to Indiana, go to a gun show, pick up a gun, 20 guns, 100 guns, and sell them to gang members here in Chicago. They have a lot of routes, but the biggest way the guns are coming. There are occasionally some gang fights with some AKs, some that kind of stuff. You hear about those, but not very often. It's going to be shotguns and handguns, stuff easily concealable, from my understanding. And like I said, I'm not an expert, but the problem in Chicago communities isn't mental health. It's not guns. It's jobs. It's white supremacy. It's white privilege. You know what I mean? Those are the things that are the problems in Chicago. It's access to affordable health care. It's access to affordable places to live. It's access to being treated like a decent human being by the the class that oppresses. So yeah.
That's about time here, 10 seconds. I would love to bring Randy up on screen. Randy, thanks for joining us here. Imagine you have some interesting perspectives to offer as well. Randy, thanks for joining us. How are you doing today? How are things in the kingdom?
Hey, what's happening, Peter? Hello, and thank you. Reb, hello. And Mr. Douglas, how
Hey
are
man,
you?
how you doing?
Yeah, I've been sitting back watching a little bit of the happenings in the U.S. from abroad, and looking. Actually, my news comes from either the Twitter or the Google. And it's not necessarily the news, but the reaction to the way the news is being presented is what most people that I run around with or in the area where I reside, we don't look at the news as much as we look at the action or reaction of the news. And I'm not really familiar. I think there was a mass shooting in Colorado. I don't know a lot about it. But the bigger talk over here is how they turned around what was perceived to be the man who went into the massage parlor or what have you and killed the ladies and made that about racism. When the man from clearly stated that he had a sexual problem and he was spending his money at massage parlors, but how we let a crazed sex maniac change all of America's mind to say, oh, wait a minute, we're racist now against Asians. So that's what we're seeing is looking from the outside, wondering how they spun this around. That's just my view, and I think there's hundreds of people that think the same way. How did we turn around a mass shooting from a sex fiend into an Asian race thing? I felt it was a big spin. Now, there's a lot that may say, hey, oh, well, it's not a spin. I'm sure there may be some Asian racism, but to use a single event to broadcast that story over and over again, I'm really not really into that. And
Yeah, I
if you
think the
look
hard
at
thing
comments,
from my perspective on your perspective perspective, Randy, is you're in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia and you're not in the United States right now, and don't really have that pulse. And I feel we talked about this before. You and I.
We
we'll
haven't
disagree
talked
on-
about this before, and I disagree with you in most things you say, but I'm willing to be up here on the screen.
Well,
with
there
you
we go.
because I respect you.
I respect you too, man. And I think I think what's happening, here is
See, what you can't do is spin around my thoughts and my feelings to change them to your feelings. And that's what I
I'm
see
not gonna do
happening
that.
throughout the news media world. Everybody wants to say, wait a minute, Randy, you can't feel that way. That's wrong. No, but I see it where I can feel that way. And I'll leave it at that. I'm sorry to be argumentative. I've had too much
No.
coffee today. Love you guys.
Randy, look, dialogue is what we want on this thing, right? And we're not always going to agree. If we did, it'd be kind of, I don't know. I mean, in some ways it'd be a good thing, but I think the perspective of various people is really good. I think the perspective of what we're seeing in other countries about this, I just saw a couple other comments from different people in the world, I think is really good too. And all of us telling it from our point of view, is very important. And the fact that we have this to do here is a good thing.
Well, Randy, I'd like to, in reference to what you were saying, so I have a lot of Asian American friends, and I live here on the West Coast where there are an enormous amount of Asian Americans. And it's possible that this shooting of these women who worked in the massage facilities is the tipping point of the end. It's coming at the end of something that's been going on for quite a long time, even prior to the pandemic. I think that once our former president started to use phrases that were in some ways pejorative towards Asian American community, or just Asians just generally, who's equating the COVID with specifically Chinese people. I think that there was an uptick. It's actually a fact. There was an uptick in hate crimes towards Asians, especially on the West Coast.
Well,
And,
being
I
the
think-
father of 2 Asian children, married to an Asian, with over 7,000 Asian relatives in Southern California, not one of them has said, I felt more suppressed than before. So I appreciate your view.
No, that's fine. I wasn't quite done though. So what I'm saying though is it's coming at the heels of a couple of hundred years of suppression and things that's really been really easy for America to forget about. We're talking like building railroads. We're talking about westward expansion. We're talking about the gold rush. We're talking about the Japanese, what a lot of people call an internment camp. I call it a concentration camp during World War II. There are a lot of things that I think have built up to this particular moment. And you've got a lot of activist young people who are very engaged on social media and feel very empowered. And this particular moment may be that threshold for them. It is not specifically only about this shooting of these women. It is just the end cap of, I'd say, a couple hundred years, and more specifically the past 4 years of contempt and hatred towards Asian Americans. That's just me postulating. That's all I was trying to say.
I can understand your thought behind that, but it confuses me how you can relate this something that happened before your birth and put it on the backs of me and the people that are living in today's time. I'm tired of suffering for history. I'm living today with my family and my children and what we're doing to life to make it better. To put the burden of the mistakes of the others on the past on the backs of the society of today, I feel that's unfair, but I understand where you're coming from. It emphasizes your way of thinking. So you can take it back further and further and find any colluded issue and put it on the stack of today's meaning to make it more presentable and more honest and more believable. And that's how I feel about when I hear you talk.
The past doesn't influence us at all, Randy. The Constitution's 250 years old. We should just throw it out. It's the past. It's no good.
We're not into the Constitution. You're changing the subject.
No, I'm not changing the subject. I'm just kind of talking about the past. Like you can't.
Anyway,
like,
I would like a rebuttal from Douglas, if you don't mind, sir.
Well, yeah, that's fine, but just hang on just a second here. I want to agree with what Douglas is saying, and I also want to point out that most people in America have this misconception that Asians are extremely wealthy. Like, oh, why do they have any problems? Well, you know who the poorest group in New York City is per capita? It's Asians. You know what I mean? All of these misconceptions that we have about people, those are part of the problem, right? So embracing love, happiness, joy, togetherness, inclusiveness, which I know you're about, is what we all need to be about. And having good, well-framed discussions are important. And Douglas, I will let you rebut with Randy.
And before
I-
you rebuttal, by the way, Douglas, my name's Randy, and I stir the pot on purpose. So never take me too hard. I kind of
oh
like
no,
stirring the pot to make things exciting. And it's great to meet you, Douglas.
it's nice to meet you too, Randy. You remind me of one of my aunts.
Come up,
Okay.
Michelle.
Is it the beard?
We have with us another guest here. We're about at 5 minutes again. Would love to just say hi to Ella. I know you're here with just audio. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, of course. Ella, thank you so much for coming up and joining here impromptu. Tell us, your perspective here or headlines that you're paying attention to.
Yeah. So I also can see both sides, but uniquely here, I am an Asian woman who owns my own small business, and the event in Atlanta, I don't actually see it as a singular event. And to Randy's point, yes, in and of itself, if you only want to take that individual's viewpoint, I mean the murderer, if you only want to listen to his viewpoint and take that event as a singular independent event, I can see Randy's point. However, Asian American women are much more likely to work in such an industry and be viewed as those who are most likely to be viewed in such an industry. So, if you put all those variables together, and on top of keeping track of the trends, which I am so acutely aware of during the past year, that has been, I don't have the stats right on top of my head, but if you guys keep track of what's happened in the Bay Area, in New York, in Atlanta, there's recently been a grandma who was attacked and she fought back. um, that individual Asian grandma, her GoFundMe page has reached over 1 million, and she just declared that she will give it all back to the AAPI. There are so many repeated events, and from my perspective, also, luckily, knock on wood, I'm knocking on my own head right now, that I have not personally witnessed anything that violent. However, I have witnessed repeatedly the increase of xenophobic behavior to myself, to my shop, to my produce, to my produce. I don't sell vegetables. To my product, and to my salespeople. So much so that more than once I have had to ask my very sweet young salespeople to just close the shop because I do not want to be responsible for their safety because I insist that my shop be open. It has been like that extreme, and it's a trend. I've been in business for probably close to 4 years with my own shop in various different places, and never have I witnessed such an increase of xenophobic behavior towards Asians. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Ella, where are you located?
I'm in Walnut Creek, California, about 30 minutes away from San Francisco. So
Got
I'm
East
in an
Bay.
outrageously diverse area, a very wealthy area, in such a place where I deemed it personally safe to open a one-person fish tank kind of outdoors fish tank, what do you call it, a kiosk kind of situation, because I'm a very small business. I just want to be there for exposure and for diversity of products because I'm in a swanky high-end mall with Neiman on one end and Macy's and Nordstrom on the other, and I live very close by. So
That's why you dress so nice, Ella. I was wondering why. You live right next to Neiman. That's why you're always
yeah,
dressed
right.
so
And
nice.
I'm not claiming I can afford any of the fashions there, but um, because I know I contribute that kind of product diversity. Every other store is like cookie cutter, but since it's in such a well-to-do neighborhood and such a diverse environment, I completely deemed it safe for me to be standing out there by myself alone at 9 o'clock at night. However, during the last 6 months, no longer. I watch my back all the time. So okay, that's all.
All right, I will go ahead and step down to make more space for more people, Peter, so it doesn't get too crowded. Thank you for letting me come in and be a little argumentative with no ill harm, just coming
Yeah,
in to
no,
try
I
to
mean,
stir the
we,
pot.
we, we do need to hear all perspectives and then reach decisions that fit our own experiences and what we see, right? So that's how we have intelligent conversations and all get something out of it.
Exactly, Ella. Thank you very much. See you folks later.
You're welcome. Yeah, so if you guys don't mind like looking in my profile later when you have a chance, one of my dear friends, they're